Welcome to the 379th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida, and boy, was it sunny here today. 86 degrees and sunshine. That's why we all live in Florida. 60s in the morning, low 80s in the daytime. Perfect time of the year. Too bad you guys aren't coming down here to join us for the marathon next weekend. Next weekend is the Stuart, Florida Treasure Coast Marathon. And we are going to have a crew of people running this event. It's going to be exciting. I talk about, all these people coming back, and you see on websites, various plant-based people's website, their success stories, and, how everything looks rosy and everything happened, dropped 200 pounds without a struggle overnight and while eating whatever and doing whatever. But, it's not without a struggle. And everybody that is running this race has had some sort of struggle. And, we talk about the hardest thing about a marathon sometimes is just getting to the start line healthy. And when you are starting unhealthy with lifestyle diseases or something else has happened to you, it's even a bigger effort. So it's not just the physical limitations and the challenges of training for a marathon, but it is life itself and what happens day to day and things that people are overcoming on a regular basis that are really putting themselves out here to run this marathon. So I couldn't be more excited for the people that are coming down to run this marathon. Again, it's not without struggle. A couple of them have had COVID, had to come back, injuries, little plantar fasciitis and some shin issues and some, health concerns and procedures that people have had to come back from, a struggle with diabetes and nutrition, trying to balance life, work, kids, and train for a marathon. But I think biggest thing is people that are doing this marathon from our group is they're putting themselves out of their comfort zone, almost, to a T. Everybody that's doing their first time event is putting themselves out of the comfort zone. They've never fueled for a long run, perhaps. They've never extended themselves this far. They never thought about running the distance before. Yet they're willing to put themselves out there. They've committed to saying, yes, I'm going to do it to their friends and family. They've bought a ticket to come to Stuart, Florida. And, I think it's such a great testimony to not knowing the outcome, never having done it before, and going to take on this challenge. And it is a challenge, whether it's 13.1 or 26.2. It's a challenge, and it's a life-changing event, so to speak. Every one of these people have had multiple great things happen to them during their life, as well as bad things happen to them during their life. But this will be a life-changing event because physically they're doing a challenge that they've not done before. So my hat goes off to them. I can't wait. It's countdown week. Everybody's starting to taper. My toe is ready to go. And I think that Michael and I are going to try to run around like Energizer bunnies over the course. We're both registered to run, and we're going to run with the half marathoners and get them to a turnaround and maybe head them back to the direction towards the finish line and then go catch the marathoners. And so we're going to make an ultra out of it. We're going to probably try to go for a 30-miler that day, just so we can see people multiple times and bask in their enjoyment of their accomplishments. So can't wait. Weather forecast is for good weather, high 60s, maybe high 70s, maybe a little rain, maybe not, but it'll be beautiful. This is a great time of the year down in Florida. So I can't wait to share the results and finisher stories. Maybe I'll get a little bit of audio with some of them after the race. We're going to meet up beforehand at a plant-based restaurant and fuel up with plant-based food and get it going and then bask in the enjoyment of success. This Sunday, I'm going to be speaking at our local Veg Fest here in Punta Gorda, Florida, along with Will Tuttle. If you haven't read his book, World Peace Diet, it's a great book. He's a great speaker. I look forward to seeing him again. It's been several years since he was to Florida, and I went to hear him speak. So that'll be a great idea. I kind of struggle with what to talk about at a Veg Fest. This Veg Fest has a health-oriented, so they actually will deem some of the vendors as heart healthy, meaning that they're plant-based, no added oil, not a lot of preservatives and things. But it turns out that a lot of the Veg Fest foods are carnival veg food, so to speak. And I remember one year somebody came by that was walking along in the park and was kind of just checking out what was going on, and they thought there'd be a lot of produce. And typically, there's a microgreen stand and maybe a water stand, but typically there hasn't been a lot of produce in the past at these Veg Fest. And I hope there is this year. I hope we have some people that grow some great mango trees. I would like to see more of that at the Veg Fest as opposed to, again, just get together outside and eat vegan junk food. So it makes it a little difficult. Most of the people that go to a Veg Fest are already vegan because there is some animal activism there. And a lot of people go that are my local members that kind of go and support the cause, so to speak. I want to give a message to them that's different. I hate when I go someplace and somebody gives the same talk over and over and over again that you could almost give it yourself. So I'd like to do something a little bit different. And I think what I'm going to talk about then, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit now, is some of the difficulties of being plant-based. And one of the conversations came up in our potluck last week in the office, and it was, even though the eating plant-based and no added oil and mainly produce is great and you feel good and you recover good and get rid of your medicines, it's still really difficult socially. One person, was very, very true. Nobody invites us to dinner. Nobody wants to eat with us. We're kind of outcast. Even if you bring your own food, people feel guilty about eating terrible food if you're eating healthy food in front of them. So that's an issue. Your options are to get new friends and plant-based people. And part of the reason why I started the practice like I have the practice is to have a membership where we can have nutrition classes and potlucks and introduce people that are like-minded, that want to be healthy and reverse disease and eat healthy. And by growing those numbers, when people go out and they demand healthy food, or they only frequent places that they can get a pretty healthy meal, it helps to increase the choices. Everybody watches. Nobody wants to go belly up if they're a restaurant and they serve, whole food, plant-based, no added oil, and nobody wants it, nobody eats it. That's not going to work. Produce doesn't last as long. So it's difficult for people that run restaurants as well to be able to offer something. But nevertheless, if enough people support the people that do, that obviously helps. If you support your local store that carries organic produce, or your local farmer that carries organic produce, they'll carry more of it. Everybody watches what's a seller, what's not a seller. So sitting home and complaining about it doesn't necessarily, help the situation. But, how much do you have to actually compromise when you go out? And unfortunately, again, people don't want to, not everybody wants to be healthy. Not everybody wants to make a change. And you can't force that. Which leads me into, people are looking for reasons why this way of eating doesn't work. So I think the title of my talk on Sunday will be Headliners, because there were two really somewhat irritating headliners this week in the Journal of American Medical Association that kind of threw plant-based nutrition under the bus, so to speak. The first study was actually published in Frontiers in Nutrition, and it was by the Population Health Department. It was a very small study, and it was based in the UK. The questionnaires were from people that lived in England, Wales, and Scotland. And there was a cohort of 399,586 people that they picked people from. But they looked at, with a questionnaire, tablespoons of vegetables. So that's the only thing that they looked at, cooked vegetables versus raw vegetables. So they looked at 4 different types: 0 vegetables, 1 to 2 tablespoons of raw vegetables, 3 to 4 tablespoons of raw vegetables, and greater than 5 tablespoons of raw vegetables. And then they looked at 0 to 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 7, and greater than 8 cooked vegetables. And then they looked at a primary cardiovascular mortality and morbidity, such as heart attacks and strokes. And the secondary endpoint was looking at heart attacks, strokes, and all-cause mortality. Again, they measured it in tablespoons. Tablespoons of raw versus tablespoons of cooked. Nothing else. So whether you ate meat, whether you ate butter, whether you chased it with butter coffee or a bunch of greasy whatever, didn't look at that. Only looked at tablespoons of vegetables. So there was a questionnaire. The average age of the people that filled out the questionnaire were 56 years of age, and the average amount of raw vegetables was 2.3 to versus 2.8 tablespoons of cooked vegetables. And there were 18,000 cardiovascular events documented. 4,400 were that secondary to cardiovascular disease. And they came up with that raw vegetables was slightly statistically significant, a decrease in cardiovascular events, but cooked wasn't. And the headline that was reported in Medscape and various places was, does vegetables really help with cardiovascular disease? And of course, I got text message from friends, unfortunately, physician friends, who have since fallen off the plant-based wagon, who don't invite me to dinner because I eat healthy, saying, hey, this looks good, but did you see what happened here? That doesn't really work. And my reply to them was, did you actually look at the study? Questionnaires over years, period of time, for people to recall whether or not they ate how many tablespoons of vegetables. It'd be pretty difficult for me to do a history right now, a dietary history, to tell you how many tablespoons of vegetables and fruits I ate today. I'd have to count up every tablespoon that I ate today, and I have no idea how many tablespoons. My friends tell me I eat way too fast, so it'd be hard to have counted them accurately even if I wanted to. But it was certainly multiple times 8 tablespoons or 6 tablespoons. But again, people run with that, idea. Of course, the study said, there are limitations. They didn't take into account various things and, vegetable availability and how people prepare things and what they use and what else do they do. But the headline is what grabs me, that people just run with, okay, you know what? Eating. And the best thing, it also included, if you had a burger, the lettuce and tomato, that could count in your tablespoons. So basically, you could eat a junk food diet and have lettuce and tomato on your sandwich. You could have probably taken it off and still counted it. I don't know if the packet of ketchup for the fries, potatoes counted as well. But if you use the ketchup packets as well, perhaps that worked too. But it's very disappointing that the medical community, 1, published that study, 2, bragged about it. Places like Medscape, people do headlines as far as studies published for the week, and people are seeing that. So, if someone were, as a physician, going to recommend a diet, and certainly nobody's going to say, well, hey, we can reverse your heart disease, or you don't have to take your statin, you can do a plant-based diet as long as you eat 5 tablespoons of vegetables. Nobody's going to do that. It is back to the old eat healthy, eat in moderation, exercise, whatever that might be. Maybe somebody will have read the 150 Minutes for the American Heart Association and let it go. So very disappointing that we can't move the ball forward in the general medical community, and very disappointing that people are quick to throw eating plants under the bus. If any of you are a little bit nervous right now and are wondering, well, maybe she got it wrong, there's also another study, the PURE study, that you can look, and I can reference as well, 135,000 people, showed a decreased mortality in eating mostly raw vegetables. It was out of Australia. But again, when we look at dietary history, that's the kind of the problem with plant-based nutrition. You can't randomly do a randomized controlled placebo trial that, one, what you're going to eat, so you have to put it in some sort of form so you couldn't taste the difference, and how are you going to follow people over time, and is it ethical to tell people not to eat any vegetables and get vitamin and mineral and nutrient deficient? You're going to give some vitamins, some not. So that's never going to happen. But we all agree that there's so many properties in fruits and vegetables, and again, in societies that eat a lot, not just tablespoons, seem to do very well. Blue zones, and every other society that has a low incidence of cardiovascular disease, including, some of the hunter-gatherer tribes. When it comes to, what age should you have to eat plant-based? Should you wait till you're old? Can you start your kids? Is there any benefit from anybody else? And, if I look at a young population, less than 20, maybe the 20 to 39, children 40 plus, 80 plus, I can show, again, a graph of improvement in overall survival. People that eat more vegetables tend to, it's beginning at any age, mathematical models. We also know that kids that don't eat dairy have less asthma, less juvenile diabetes, less risk of prostate and breast cancer as they get older, less obesity, better dental health. Kids that chew need less braces. They actually develop their jaw as opposed to eating mushy type French fries and soft hot dogs and things like that they actually don't have to chew. Women that are plant-based, that are eating a mainly vegetable diet, less weight gain with pregnancy if you're eating less processed food, less indigestion with pregnancy, better overall health, antioxidants, less risk of cold, better immune function. Take it back on into the 30s and 40s, less arthritis, less joint issues, better recovery from illness, decreased risk of cancer when you're not, again, accumulating metabolic waste, decreased risk of diabetes. The next study that I'm irritated about was actually published in the Journal of American Medical Association, and that was, the name of this study is Associations Between Unprocessed Red Meat and Processed Meat with Risk of Recurrence and Mortality in Patients with Stage 3 Colon Cancer. So now the question is, if you already have Stage 3 colon cancer, is it that risky to eat red meat or processed meat? And is processed meat just bad, and so you can eat red meat? And so this was another observational study that looked at 1,000, it started with 1,095 patients with stage 3 colon cancer, and they did 2 surveys, 3 months into their diagnosis and 6 months, up to 6 months after chemotherapy. Only 981 completed the second survey. Women were excluded if they had less than 500 calories in or greater than 3,500 calories a day. Men were excluded if they had less than 800 or more than 4,200 calories per day. And there were people that were also excluded that died within 3 months or had recurrent disease. So you can see how the population in that study started to dwindle pretty quickly. And what they came up with was that based on what they ate at 3 and 6 months, following them up for 6 years showed no increased or decreased survival if they ate red meat or processed meat. So again, it comes down to a mathematical model that we've excluded people that eat, that were very sick and couldn't eat very many calories, or that were morbidly obese and ate way too many calories, people that died, people that had recurrence of disease. And so we were left with a population that was probably prone to do well regardless. The 5-year survival for colon cancer that is around stage 3 is somewhere around 70 to 80%. So 70% with treatment, exclude those various groups that weren't doing well, and you would expect the people to be okay and survive. So I don't think you can put much weight on processed meat or unprocessed red meat being a cancer extender. They even went as far as saying that carbohydrates may make it worse. It's pretty hard to believe that if once you get significant colon cancer, all of a sudden the stuff that caused you to get colon cancer or increased your risk of colon cancer is going to make you do better. We know that the gut microbiome is affected by red meat, animal products in general, causes more inflammation, more inflammatory compounds, certainly processed with nitrates is a carcinogen. The amount of meat intake is increased in our environment that colonoscopies are now recommended at age 45 versus 50. So the diagnosis of colon cancer is backing up further and further for some reason in our population, in the Western world. And it is associated with increased meat consumption. And again, even if we left colon cancer death rates out of it, increased animal product consumption is associated with increased cardiovascular disease, increased cholesterol, increased inflammatory conditions as well. So the health of our population is not getting better because we're eating more meat and not enough fruits and vegetables. It also goes back to the reductionist viewpoint in that if we're looking at a specific disease, whether a specific food causes an increase or decrease in that particular disease, is a very difficult study to perform and actually come to any kind of valid conclusion. What is your health span like? Do you have diverticular disease? Do you have chronic constipation? Do you have infections? Do you have heart disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune diseases? Are you in and out of the hospital just because you got your colon cancer resected and had chemotherapy? Are you going to have another procedure done? How many procedures do people actually expect to have over age 50? Just because you survived surgery and chemotherapy and it takes a while for a tumor to grow back is not a good enough reason in my mind to chance fate and eat the thing that we know increases your risk of a decreased health span. And ultimately, a lot of people that have cancer don't die of cancer, they die of cardiovascular disease. It is still the number one killer in the United States. So again, it's, we tend to be afraid of cancer and not afraid of cardiovascular disease because it seems as though there's always going to be a procedure, a stent or a bypass, and everybody knows someone that's had one of those procedures done and seems to come back, and we feel invincible from those cardiac conditions. But it's the cancer and the chemotherapy, maybe because people lose their hair, they get sick, or they lose a lot of weight, or they look a lot worse than when people have a heart attack suddenly and die, or they have multiple stents and bypasses. You don't see, they don't look as bad. So we're not as afraid of cardiovascular disease as we are of cancer. So these studies, again, they seem to be on par with, eat what you want, doesn't really matter. We'll do a therapy or a procedure, and we can keep you going. And there's not much you can do. You just have to wait, keep getting your procedures, keep getting your screens, and then the medical community will give you a medicine or take something out and fix you up, and you can go on your own merry way. I guess we can circle all the way back around to eating healthy is not the popular choice in most circumstances. It's even hard for physicians. If you go to the doctor's lounge or you see what doctors eating, you see them out to dinner with the drug representatives or the device representatives, they're typically going to go to a steakhouse or a restaurant that is a very high-fat, high-salt cuisine. So it's really hard to be able to spend a day telling people how they should eat a whole food, plant-based diet, avoid oil while they're getting ready to go out and have a big steak and a lot of greasy food or a greasy pizza or whatever that makes them feel good as well. So everything has to be taken into context. And this is not for everybody. We go back to it. I practiced medicine a long time the traditional way, where I saw consults with people with heart disease on medications, and I titrated medications for heart disease, and I titrated medications for diabetes and high blood pressure, and did procedures, and followed people with stress tests on a yearly basis. And I never took anybody off of medications, and they never ran a marathon. They never say I felt great. They would continue their same old ways with more pain and medication and diagnosis that would be accumulated as they went on. And just accepted that as part of getting old. You know, people say the golden years and all those other little blurbs that people say in Florida that, you know, you have to be brave to get old and so on and so forth. But when I changed the practice, all of a sudden, people started coming to me that wanted to have a better health span, wanted to be more in control of their health and have a say and be able to direct their own health care and not feel like a victim, like they could actually do something that helped themselves. And so I'm proud to say that those people are doing well. Maybe they don't get invited to dinner as much. Maybe they don't get to go to every greasy spoon up and down the road that's available, or they choose not to. They could, but they choose not to. But for the first time, I'm seeing people come off of their medication, come off their insulin, come off their blood pressure medicine, not have to have procedures, not have to have chest discomfort, feel good, skin looks good, feel energetic. And that didn't happen before. So maybe I have a skewed, and I do have a skewed population now. I have people that want to be healthy and want to live a certain way. But again, it's not a big percentage of people that want to do that. The large majority are out there in the mainstream with the main greasy spoon restaurants and the fast food restaurants. The organic produce aisle is small. The vegan, you know, the menu for plant-based people is small. That's because we don't have a big population. Perhaps the veg fests that are occurring will attract more people when they see healthier people. I hope that the message is one of inclusion and happiness and demonstration of being healthy. And that's what we're going to do next weekend at the marathon. You know, we're going to celebrate health and wellness from a variety of different illnesses that people have come back from. And it's really important to me. I think it's a win for everybody to say, hey, I can do something different and I can be in charge of my own health. I can choose to eat a certain way and I'm getting good results and I feel good about it. So I commend those people that want to. I'm certainly not angry with those who don't want to do it. It's not for everybody. But if you're interested in doing that and you would like some health, it doesn't matter what your age is. The funny part about it is my practice used to be in Florida. Probably mainly, I would say the average age of my original practice was probably 70 to 75. Now we're back down into the, you know, maybe 55 to 60. We have 30-year-olds. We have a few 20-year-olds. We still have a couple of 90-year-olds in their mid-90s, several actually. But we have a much younger population because, one, unfortunately, people are getting illnesses at earlier ages, and they don't want to. They want to figure out how to reverse it and not have these things, and they want their family to be healthy. So it's been a real pleasure in making this transition. But I'm also enjoying seeing people that are living well and healthy well into their 90s. So anyway, if you'd like to learn more about our practice, you can go on over to DrDulaney.com, DoctorDulaney.com. You can email me at Jami, Jami, at DrDulaney.com with any questions. And who knows, maybe someday I'll run a marathon with you. We're going to be doing the Treasure Coast next week, and then in April we'll be back to Texas in the Houston area for the Brazos 50-miler, and then in June out to Colorado to Pikes Peak Trail Marathon, and who knows, probably back to Texas if I can to find another trail race, because Some pretty special people live out there. So don't be afraid to choose healthy. Let your produce guy at your local supermarket know that you want organic, that you want an increased selection of vegetables, you want certain fruits. They'll get them in if you'll eat them. And they might even cut you a deal on a box of them. Let your restaurants know that you want some healthy options and that you'll support them if you have a few healthy options. Give them some ideas of what you'd like to make when you go there. Be kind, ask nicely, and, show off a good body, show off a med-free medicine cabinet, show off being healthy and happy, and who knows, maybe others will want to be just like you. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week with some exciting news.